Mic check.
Hold mics like ponytails tight and bobble ops. Stop, stick around, come through and dig the sound of the fly brown 6060 cycle. Who throws hits around?
Welcome to another episode of Wine Down with Kev. If you don't already know, now you know. I am super excited to be here today with my special guest, my firstborn, my namesake. Let me give him a proper introduction. He is the vice president of Kevin Spann and Sons. He's a day trader, a serial entrepreneur, a real estate investor. At one point, he was the youngest college basketball coach in the country. He's a world traveler. He's played ball in almost every NBA arena in several countries. 1,000-point scorer in high school, 1,000-point scorer in college, and most importantly, your two biggest and newest titles, you're Mary's husband and Caleb's dad. Ladies and gentlemen, my namesake, Kevin Spann II. How you doing this morning? You good?
I'm real good. Coffee's good. Introduction was even better. Checks in the mail. I forgot half that stuff, so that's why I'm like, you can't be talking about me.
No. Let's jump right into it. You're newlywed, so we're going to shout out Mary first. Shout out to my daughter-in-law, Mary. I'm going to ask you one marriage question. You just got married. It's not going to be hard.
Yeah.
Do you remember the only marital advice I ever gave you?
Oh, 1,000%. You can be right or you can be happy. You can't be both.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it. What choice have you made in your
be happy.
first 3 months of marriage? Have you chose being happy over being right?
I'd say I chose peace.
There you go.
Whatever
peace.
way that comes in. So peace. We do a pretty good job as a team to keep the peace.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Shout out to my daughter-in-law, Mary. I love him. When you see pictures of my sneakers, Mary is my stylist when it comes to my sneaker game. She is keeping me fresh and young, and I appreciate it so much. So we're in the family space. You are my firstborn. Talk to me about fatherhood. What is it like to be Caleb's dad?
Sleepless. I said goodbye to sleep, but I said hello to a beautiful tornado. That's what I call him. A year and a month, about 13 months and some change now. First person I see in the morning, last person before I go to bed. He's learning at a rapid rate. And for me, whenever I feel confident about a routine, it might take me 2 or 3 weeks to get a routine. He's changing. So you have to get a new routine. But right now he's eating adult food. He's in Kid Strong. He's coming to all the basketball games I coach at. So he's pretty popular. He's a lot more popular than he thinks he is. But it's definitely been the most peace I've had.
I love it. I love the peace. Let's just talk about definition of fatherhood and your role as a dad.
Yeah.
Traditionally, people may think of men and women role being hands off. Talk to some of the fellas in the chat and the people out there about some of the things you do as a dad, nurturing your son.
Oh, 1,000%. So I'm the softie. The part of me is the softie. I make sure the playpen is clear. His mother thinks that I'm a bit soft with all the toys being hazardous. I do all the cooking, the pamper changing. We're teaching him some of the words, but his mom is with him a lot as well, and she's a lot more rougher than I am. So most people think that I'm probably putting him through drills and suicides at a young age. I'm actually the softer one. So he brings out the soft side of me. So got to give him that.
I love it. So I put it in Facebook yesterday. Normally when I do a podcast, I don't use any notes. I just talk to my guests. I think about my guests. I think about what I don't know and what I want to learn about my guests. But with you, it was a whole different challenge because we kind of know each other. So I wanted some feedback from the people as to what they wanted to do. So part of my introduction to you was that you're a serial entrepreneur. So talk to the people about one of your first business ventures that you ever had.
Oh, that came from just no allowance.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
You got to position things the right way. So we're talking 30 years ago. So we're talking 1994, 95. starting to fall in love with the game of basketball. There's a popular guy in our area named Michael Jordan. His practice facility is right next to your job. So we're dropping you off in a Nissan Maxima with a dent in the back. Mike's pulling up with a cigar and a Ferrari 5 minutes after you walk into the building, and that was my childhood. So watching him dominate the Knicks and other teams, and his sneakers are releasing, and the sneakers are $125, $150 with tax. And I said, Dad, I need these. And you were very candid when you said, there are like 30 cars on this neighborhood block. They all need to be washed for $5 a pop. There's your money right there. And if it wasn't car wash season, it was snow shoveling season. If it wasn't snow shoveling season, it was leaf raking season. So just little, things that I can control and kind of create my own cash flow, and that just led to me never really like relying on a job for money.
I love it. It gives you a certain mindset how to generate your own bread. So you talked about the absence of allowance. What a terrible dad you must have grown up with, not giving you an allowance and teaching you how to get out and earn $1. One of your next business ventures. So the Michael Jordan reference, for those of you that don't know, Kev's born here in New York. 2 weeks ago, I had my son Dom on. He was born in Chicago. So we moved to Chicago when he's 5 years old. So we grew up while the Bulls are dominating. Unfortunately, we lived there for all 6 championships that I suffered through. But that's the environment where you fell in love with the game of basketball. And I want to get to basketball. Shout out to my brother Eric Springs. He wants us to talk about hoops, but I want to delay that because if we start talking about hoops, the rest of the interview is over.
That's a different therapy session. That's a different therapy session.
But I do want to stay with the entrepreneur piece. Talk about N1 mixtapes and how you monetize that opportunity.
Yeah, so right after Mike retired the second time, there was a lull in basketball, and we were in a grocery store. And I knew I wasn't going to be that tall. So there was a Street and Smith magazine that featured all the college programs during the preseason, like around Thanksgiving time. And the most honest advice you ever gave me was, hey, listen, man, you're not going to be that tall. So let's highlight all the teams with a point guard under 6 feet, 5'10", 5'9", 5'11". And that's what I did. So I probably found 30 or 40 mid-major programs, and I came across Fresno State. And they had a local Queens, New York City legend on the team, Rafer Alston.
Yes.
And the magazine was the best point guard you never heard of.
Yes.
A year later, N1, the sneaker company, they had just signed Stephon Marbury, a rookie, on the Timberwolves, and they cross-referenced Rafer Alston, Skip to My Lou, and kind of found his archived highlight tapes from New York City in the early and mid-'90s. And it was a combination of breakdancing, street ball, basketball, Rucker Park. You got the nutcrackers, you got the food out there, you got the rappers out there, you got the dice throwers out there, and it just felt like home. And if you bought a pair of sneakers for $70, you get a free N1 mixtape.
Yes.
When I moved to New York in 2000, the tape was in high demand. So I would go to the dollar store and get 30 or 40 $1 VHSs. And then I would put a VCR on top of another VCR, and I would dub the tape illegally. This is pirating. And the crime is only 7 years. After 7 years, you can't arrest me. So I was pirating in the late 90s, 13 years old. I probably sold about 10 tapes a day at $20 a pop. So I was making $200, $300 a day. And one of my substitute teachers was Danny Green Sr.
Yes.
And he had caught me with a book bag full of cash and tapes, and he said, "You're not here for this." So he confiscated my bag, took a tape home for his kids, and that's how I met Danny Green Jr.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We're going to get back to Danny Green Jr., your best friend, in a minute. Staying on the entrepreneur spirit, we got here today. Bernardino complimented your hair. So talk to the people about how you got into cutting hair, and why won't you ever let me cut your hair again?
No. So I got to bring it back to mid-'90s. Nas is one of the hottest rappers in New York, and Nas had the perfect haircut. Right, bald side fade with the waves on top and the half moon part. And if you remember the video, I remember asking you to go to Mr. Dave's barbershop. Mr. Dave had to be 80 years old with Alzheimer's and the shaky hands. And I'm like, I can't let him cut my hair. But that haircut was like $13 for a kid back then. And you were like, I'm not going to pay for this haircut, but I'm going to buy some $20 wall clippers from Walmart. You're going to learn how to cut hair.
Yes.
And so after 30 or 40 really bad bald Caesars, got solid. My local friends, shout out to Duke and Quintel, little Jimmy. Those guys let me cut their hair in middle school. So, over time, by the time I moved to New York, I started sweeping at the barbershop, at Reggie's Barbershop, and I get paid $25 a day for sweeping, plus a couple of dollars to run to the store. And I just ended up learning how to get the proper clippers and how to line up and how to taper. And that was the second venture, was probably cutting hair before high school started. And that was my major source of income in college and traveling with the Harlem Globetrotters. I was making more money cutting hair than playing. So I was a clear indication on where I should be spending most of my time.
That is a beautiful thing. So people listeners, this is the origins of a serial entrepreneur as I introduced him. You take your clippers with you to prep school. Yeah. You're cutting hair there, and then you saw some other opportunities to monetize.
Yeah, so both my brothers went to the same preparatory school years after me. So Dom's 6 years younger than me. I think Dom went to prep in 2010. Mm-hmm. He's with like Andre Drummond and Steph Curry's brother-in-law. Shout out to Dame Lee. And then Trey is 18 years younger than me, so he went 20 years later pretty much. And both of them told me they put some rules in play because of you. I said, what do you mean? So when I went to prep school, I was already making money. I was doing prepaid legal services. Yes. I think I was an executive director at like 18, just hustling. All the rap songs out there, kind of establishing the culture. So you got to have some money. Yes. Got to have some walking around money. And in prep school, I was already a pretty good student. I was skinny and short, so I had to bulk up and gain weight, and a lot of my teammates couldn't read or write, so I would help them with their homework. Now I'm charging $20 a paper. I'm charging $15 for the homework. Portable DVD players that just came out. We're from Long Island.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah. So Queens, New York. Shout out to Jamaica Avenue, Queens, New York. If you had $100 in the early 2000s, you were going to Jamaica Ave, to the Coliseum. I think Lamar Odom had bought Kim Kardashian to the Coliseum at one point, but you get your fake jewelry and the real jewelry, your Air Force Ones, your white tees, your DVDs and your CDs, and a beef patty. That's what the Coliseum was. So I would get all the hottest mixtapes, all the latest movies that came out in the barbershop from, my Chinese lady. Shout out to my Chinese lady. And I would, once again, pirate the movies, pirate the music. I was cutting hair. Dinner was at 5 o'clock, right, Dom? So you were hungry by 6, and you had to wait till the next day. So I would buy mini muffins and Pop-Tarts and Gatorade, and I would probably spend about $400 at Costco's and flip that into $1,200 at prep school. So I remember one time you came to pick me up, and I had 4 or 5 soap dishes of cash. You're like, I sent you up there for school and books, but if you're doing something illegal, I need to know right now. And I said, no, it's all clean money. And I got to clean it again when I get home, but it's all clean. So, yeah, now prep school has a late night snack shack. They have barbers that come to the school, and they have tutors, so they cut in all the money. But when I go up there, they call me Kevin Frank Lucas.
That's it.
That's it. So yeah, they definitely established some things up there. But people have money and people have needs, and if you can get in between, there's a green.
It's woo, I like that. People, somebody that's a clip right there. People have money, people have needs. If you get in between, there's the green. So I think we touched on most of your business ventures during your youth. The only thing we missed was the throwback jersey era.
Oh man, that was nice. So throwback jerseys, Mitchell and Ness.
Yes.
Jay-Z ruined that business. Shout out to Hov for making us wear crispy jeans and button-ups. A lot of nasty photos between 05 and 08 in the NBA with guys wearing 5X button-ups and diesel shoes and baggy jeans. But no, the throwback jersey game was huge because, once again, supply and demand. Mm-hmm. So I'd go to the city with my cousin Javar, my cousin Will. Mm-hmm. We go to 25th and Broadway, right by 4040 Club, where Jay-Z first opened it, and across was a sweatshop. Mm-hmm. A lot of illegal stuff that I think back about it, but we used to go to a sweatshop and buy a bundle. So for $300, you can get 10 fake throwbacks. They like Mitchell and S, not Ness. And so we go spend the $300 for 10 throwbacks, come back to Long Island, take orders, and we sell them for $200 to $400. I mean, I went to private school, so guys have birthday money. They have bar mitzvah money. So we'd probably make a lot of money, and then the jersey sales stopped. They stopped. So many businesses failed before I even turned 21.
You also had a setback in that business because of a certain jersey that was sold that wasn't the quality of what you were selling. I think your cousin sold a jersey that was low.
My cousin had a Larry Bird throwback, number 33 Larry Bird throwback. you had a dry cleaners. You would bring all your suits to the dry cleaners. So sometimes if I didn't feel like re-ing up, I'd sneak my jerseys in your suit pile and get some free laundering done. But we had like a $400 customer, and my cousin got the jersey for like $75. I'm like, this is a nice flip. I don't need a lot. I take my 20%. You keep the rest. All I ask is that you bring this jersey to the cleaners 2 blocks from your house. You know exactly what I'm talking about right there. And he just threw the jersey in some plastic in a hanger, never washed it. And we're in Las Vegas at a basketball tournament. He's with us. Dom is there. Dom is hanging out with NBA players. My cousin's meeting NBA players. And I get a call on my prepaid cell phone back then. You mother father. You sold me a dirty jersey with ketchup stains and chocolate stains and nacho stains. And that was the end of the business locally. So a lot of mistakes early on. A lot of mistakes
Business
early
tip
on.
number 1, service matters. Service matters. You mentioned prepaid legal. We're not going to sell anybody any prepaid legal in this podcast. But talk to me about some of the books you were introduced to at 18 years old when you, shout out to Mitchell Backus for having you join that business. But talk about some of the books you were introduced to at 18 years old and how that influenced your thinking as an entrepreneur.
I think that was the biggest game changer. Growing up with athletes, I tell people, you take your passion seriously, it's going to open up doors. So athletes can't make money. We can't have a mall job. We can't, work retail because you're training all the time. And so my buddy Mitchell was a really good high school football player, multi-athlete, and he got a PACE scholarship. And so Mitch going there, he was also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. So between his fraternity brothers and his football teammates, he had brought me to a meeting. No details. Just be at the Hilton Hotel conference room right here in Uniondale, matter of fact.
Wow.
I'm 18 years old, and I met a lot of people with a network marketing business. And I just never seen people in suits that were young, that were positive at the time, uplifting. And they taught us how to go door to door and sell. But the biggest thing I learned was the books, the information. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. As a Man Thinketh, Millionaire Next Door, How to Win Friends and Influence People. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So I probably found about 2 dozen books that I was reading. And the good and bad part about this is I'm reading these books as I'm about to start college.
Yes.
So I wasn't the best college student because I would just think that they weren't teaching financial management and wealth and cash flow and scale. I was into that at 18, 19, not the Pythagorean theorem and the Mesopotamia and artwork, the Renaissance art. So I was a C student on purpose. I did just enough to get the grade I needed to keep my scholarship, but I was so much more interested in 2004 to 2008 on just how money works. And I think the best thing you said to me, as you saw my personality, you were just like, listen, I don't really care about the grades. I care about you understanding how money works and meeting the right people. And I think that was the best advice you can give that kind of like type A kid that's just looking for the opportunity area every day.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So you said something that I know the answer to, but I want you to expand on for the audience. You said because an athlete is training, he doesn't have time for a 9 to 5. So shout out to one of your early coaches, Coach T-Head, who at one point when you were in about 6th grade, 7th grade, you're playing with the Illinois Heat. And T-Head says to me, Kevin, your son is a Division I guard. I'm like, what is Division I? So you had to be the hardship of being raised by someone who's a never was, that never played sports at any level, tried out every year, loved the game, didn't play. But once we found out what that was, talk about what your training regiment was like from 6th grade forward, really the preparation that went into being an undersized guard and making it to play at the Division I level.
Well, I mean, I challenge that. And when I say I challenge that, the biggest asset we have is information. So I think when you started to show me how to get information and how to apply it, we could start with my first 3rd grade basketball game. I was the worst kid on the team with asthma. So let's be honest here. You were an assistant coach. I'm the backup point guard, and I couldn't be any worse in 2nd grade. 3rd grade, you got the head coaching job. I think we got a picture with Dom as like the team manager. He might have been like 3 or 4, and I was still pretty bad.
Yes.
But I had more responsibility. And then by my 3rd year youth basketball, I have a cousin who's 2 years older than me, but 2 feet taller than me. And by that time, you're in your 3rd year of coaching. You bring on an assistant coach, Mr. Kinney, who is a disciplinarian. But also give yourself credit in the fact that, I grew up in the childhood of Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, Biggie, Tupac, And you had a lot of affluent friends. I mean, you grew up with Rakim, probably one of the best lyrical rapper. You knew LL Cool J and Daryl Chill Mitchell. So where we lacked in information about how to be a good ball player, you never lacked in information about how to be ambitious. So we have to start with that. But more importantly, I would say, my first AAU coach, he had sent a Division I player to St. Louis University, Marquis Perry.
Yes.
So I didn't understand D1, but I met Marquis, 6'1" point guard. He came to our practices, and he just answered all of our questions. How much the ball handled. Marquis would dribble a flat basketball in a plastic bag for an hour a day. How much to do condition. Basketball's running. Kids don't like to run.
Right.
I had asthma. So developing an appetite for training and your cardiovascular, and then studying the game. If you spend 90% of the time studying what a coach expects on top of what the fans want, on top of what you want to accomplish in a game, those are just three worlds meeting at once. So I think you did a great job of setting goals for me. How to score 2 points in a game.
Yes.
And then 2 1/4.
Yes.
And then 10 1/4. And then 40 in a game. So the goal setting was where the foundation was. It wasn't really the information about how to get somewhere, because I think I told you recently the goal, the destination's for the ego.
Yes.
But the journey's for the soul.
Yes.
So I'm happy that I left no stone unturned with my preparation and learning, more importantly than what I achieved.
That's a beautiful thing, beautiful way to put it. So Chicago to New York, I want to stay right there. Just going to touch in hoops. You mentioned Danny Green Jr. We moved here. We moved to North Babylon for one reason. Don't laugh at me.
I was pissed.
Don't laugh at me, people. I mean, the reason we bought a house in North Babylon, I knew you were by 8th grade going into 9th when we came back home. There was a trajectory for your career in Chicago, and I really didn't want to leave, but your mother said it was time to come home. So we're home.
Right over happy.
We can be right or we can be happy. Chose happiness. But we buy a house in a community because I had read in the paper back in the days when people read the paper that this school had a couple of 6'7" twins, and I thought that with you at the point guard, there was a future in this community. How did that work out with those twins? Nothing against them, but how much did they love the game of basketball compared to your passion?
I'm going to be very politically correct because I like being positive at this point in my life. The first question I asked you was, and to give context, I got pretty good in a short amount of time.
Yes.
From being really bad in 3rd grade to by 8th grade, we had won a national championship.
Yes.
And I'm playing with the likes of like Sean Livingston, a lot of those guys from Chicago, Sean Dockery, Eddie Curry. So, you put me around the best of the best.
Yes.
And then we move middle of 8th grade. So I have to start this process all over again. And the first question I asked you was, Dad, who went Division I from North Babylon in the last 20 years? And there was one guy, Derek Brower from Syracuse. So I'm already trying to break Derek's records. And the second guy was actually a second cousin of ours, Barry Baker.
Yes.
Shout out to Barry Baker, the touchdown maker. Barry was the best track, high school basketball player and football player. And Barry and Derek both went to Syracuse. Jim Boeheim, you know. So if I wasn't 6'11" like Derek Brower or 6'1", 225, all muscle like Barry Baker, how would I carve out my own lane? And I want to shout out Jerry Powell.
Of course.
Right, basketball results. Jerry was a young trainer back then. He was training guys like Mike James and Wally Zerbiak, and we found him by accident. Me and Danny Jr. would referee Little League games, and Mr. Green, his dad, was a commissioner of the league, and Jerry would come in with those guys at midnight on a Sunday night, and they had strength shoes.
Yes.
And me being a short guard trying to jump high, I said, Dad, I got the same shoes they have. I'm going to ask if I could work them out. And the first thing Jerry said was, we don't train effing kids.
Yes.
And I said, that's cool because I'm not an effing kid. We could just play one-on-one for the money.
Right.
And so I tried to take his money the first time I met him. And he went, I like this kid.
Yes.
So he let me go home and get my strength shoes, and he let me train with them. And that was the first start of it. But between Jerry Powell and Gary Charles and the people that saw my potential in North Babylon, we won a league championship my first year. And I stole a starting spot from 10 guys. So we had won the league championship, but we lost to Smithtown in the first round, and I'm pissed because you need a state championship to be a Division I point guard. So you guys took that from me. I don't know if I ever told you a story, but what I did was I went in their locker after the game and I took all the stuff they loved and I threw it away.
Yep.
And they were looking for it for weeks. And I said, if you're going to give me pain, I'm going to return the pain right there. Next time, love the game a little more. But we ended up transferring.
Yes.
You know, we were told at the private school league back then, when I'm now coaching at Chaminade. So funny full circle story 20 years later, that college coaches love to recruit from the private school leagues because the grades aren't an issue, the character's not an issue, the uniform, you have some professionalism. And so by transferring to St. John the Baptist, that was the beginning, and I played for J.D. Walsh, who was a 6'9" power forward and played at Maryland.
Yes.
And he went the prep school route, St.
Yes.
Thomas More. So shout out to J.D. for not only teaching me, you know, how college business works. It took me to China as a sophomore in high school.
15 years old.
I had a chance to play with Big East guards at 15. So Daryl Showtime Hill led St. John's in the Big East in scoring. Donald Copeland, head coach at Wagner, was a star player at Wagner. So just learning a lot, you know, taking the lumps early, and that was really the beginning of what it took. And it's a 6-hour day.
So speaking of what it took, what kind of parents did you have that you got an invitation to go to China with 2 days' notice? What kind of people would give a 15-year-old a passport and give you the okay to go to China for 2 weeks?
I think you guys did a great job kind of positioning me with what I wanted. If I didn't want it that bad, you probably caused more concern, but just loving the game so much. What's funny is we had played a summer league game. That was the only time I got a chance to play with Danny. It was in the summer for North Babylon, even though both of us didn't go to North Babylon. So we're like two private school kids sneaking back on our public school team, and we had beat Walt Whitman, who was a really good team. You know, Antoine Agudio, ultimate scorer Hofstra, Nick Carter, really good friend of mine, college teammate, great player. And we had dogged them. And I was like, if we ever did stay in North Babylon, it would be scary. But I called my private school coach. Hey, coach, we just beat Whitman. He was like, nice, man. You want to go to China in 2 days? I'm like, yeah. So he's like, can your parents get you? And you guys drove me to Manhattan, spent $300 you didn't have to get me an expedited passport. I think you gave me like another $150 and said, make it work. You know, that was a funny part. This is before the cell phone.
Yes.
Right after 9/11, right after SARS had just came out, a Chinese airborne disease. But going over there for 3 weeks and learning, I was basically having a pro Olympic experience at 15. And I'm like, man, I have a different respect for pros who don't have their family with them every day. No mom, no dad. As a 15-year-old, I'm with 19-year-olds. Learning that people smoke cigarettes in the arena in China. The food is different. The electricity is different. The smells are different. So that gave me an idea of just, you know, the world culture is bigger than America. The professional culture is bigger than your local CYO youth game. And there's a certain seriousness you need. And once I got to that level, I realized, forget the talent and size needed. I don't think there are that many serious people that love basketball past this discomfort. And that's when I knew I kind of understood you might be more talented than me or taller or work harder, but you're not okay with the discomfort. So I got comfortable with being really uncomfortable with what it took to be a professional at like 15, 16 years old.
So let's talk about world travel, 2 phases. China, outside the trips you took with me through Allstate and through business, China was your introduction to world basketball travel. We've been traveling the country with AAU, between the Heat, Gary Charles, New York Panther. We're used to running across the country. You go to China, fast forward, you travel the world with the Harlem Globetrotters. But while you're there on that journey, it's like, Dad, the basketball piece is fun, but I really want to travel without having to play.
Yeah.
So talk about both phases of what it's like to travel as a professional player and then what it's like to travel by choice because you want to be someplace and you want to see something.
The closest thing I can compare it to is a military experience, right? So when you train for the military, there's basic training. You know, you're on the beach, you got the shore water coming up through your nose, band of brothers, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Same thing with basketball, is that you're not there for your leisure. An average day with the Globetrotters internationally, number one, you don't know what time it is, what time zone you're in. So it could be 8 a.m. in England, but it's, you know, probably 3 a.m. in the morning. So there's no communication with your family because they're knocked out. Your nutrition. I probably took a lot of vitamins and protein shakes. So probably took zinc and potassium and magnesium because when you travel, you're losing a lot of those vitamins and you're just dehydrated all the time. So having a bag full of supplements and vitamins and protein shakes, and then you need your bananas, your fruit. Where's the local fruit market next to the arena is my first concern. The stretching required. You know, you have to have a stretch guy. You're, doing yoga if you can. And then 3, you got to get to the arena, get a feel for the gym. It's quiet. Sound check is setting up. You're looking for the dead spots on a court. You're trying to find the rim. The depth perception is different. And then after that, you have to keep a calm mind, because now it's about taking on the energy of 5,000 fans, and you have the autographs, and you have to promote the game. You have PR. You have a radio show. The entire time, it's not fun. So, yeah, the Eiffel Tower's right there, but I'm locked in on the 37,000 thing I have to do. And then it's the 2 hours before the game is the most quiet time. Do I know my plays? Do I know my sets? Am I ready to entertain? Am I thinking about anything else that could distract me from performing at a high level? And then after the performance is over, that's just the beginning, because now you have to come down from all that dopamine, So we play board games after. I'd read, or music, the iPod that just came out. And then you have to do the same exact thing the next day for 180 days. So when I did see it, I said it would be really special to see this again with my family, my loved ones, a significant other, a child. And so the second chapter of my life, probably after 28, I wanted to see some of those places, but not at the itinerary of a professional organization, just my time and my dime.
Beautiful. So I'm just going to ask you about one trip you took, not basketball related. You're coaching basketball, end of your basketball season. You call your brother and you said, let's go to Cuba.
Yeah. That was a fun time, man. It was interesting coaching him, So this is my childhood brother. We spent so much time together, and then because of my basketball career, we kind of I went to prep school. He's in middle school. I go Division I for 2 years. He's probably going to high school. I transferred Division II. We start winning a lot of championships. He's probably just finishing high school. Now he goes to boarding school, and I'm home, and we just kind of missed each other. So now at this point, I'm watching him grow as a player. I was with him during his college visits, and now he's in college. But then he's a young dad, and so our timelines just missed. I was like, man, I haven't seen you in like 15 years. I see you, but I haven't seen you. Just go to Cuba, so randomly. And that was probably the first time. I think that was like 2017. Probably the first time we spent time since I graduated high school in 2004.
Right.
But we're just completely different people.
Right.
The best part of it was there's no Wi-Fi in Cuba unless you buy it at a local store. So we just had to talk to each other for 4 days. It was interesting. I would probably learn more from him now, as a dad, and he's also, being a couple of years younger than me, he's way more in tune with what's going on with streaming and music. And I think he had a buddy that was doing music at the time. And so I'd ask him questions about how a beat is made, or, what's going on in entertainment. That's the best part about having brothers born in different generations. As the world changes, I get to lean on those guys way more than I could ever inform them on outdated, technology that'll never be used again.
That's the beauty. That's the secret sauce. So we talked about coaching, Dom. I want to ask you just one coaching question from your team. You're one of the youngest basketball coaches in the country, St. Joseph College. What I love about it, what I want to ask you is not anything about anything on the court. I want to ask about what you emphasized off the court, the trips you took with your team to try on a suit, and the life preparation, and also the relationship you have with them many years later after you've stopped coaching. They've all graduated, they're all working, they're all doing well in life. So talk about what you were thinking when they came to you at 18, what you saw you needed to do to prepare them, because I would say Andy and Fernando and those guys are 27, 28 now?
No, they're 30.
Oh, my
30
God.
My college, so when I say my college kids, I was the youngest college coach in the country. So I'm 28 coaching 23-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So much like Dom, right, my younger brother, a lot of them are like a younger brother. But I will say this, they were the best therapy I've ever had, because the Division III experience is so different than Division I and Division II. And as a college coach caring about other people's kids, you got to be honest with parents. Each kid has a certain personality that's fit at that level. So to play Division I, probably the most task, all the time is committed to that. The training, the nutrition, the diet. The Division II is a nice balance because you're probably not dealing with that amount of students on campus. It's not a cash generator. So being a Division II champion was one thing, but then coaching Division III, that gave me a full spectrum. And so the Division III kids, they're not getting athletic money. Their parents are paying some type of tuition if they're not earning academic. So I couldn't ask them to commit what I had committed, but at the same time, I gave them all the X's and O's behind it. So any kid that took a liking to the detail of the game, we developed 4,000 point scores, 1,000 point scores in 3 years because they just loved the information. But what was important to me was what kind of person they were. And I'd ask myself a lot of questions, which is why they were the best therapy. When I played Division I, it wasn't my coach's job to care about me.
Yes.
Right? He had to find people that wanted success.
Yes.
And if I wasn't delivering that, I had a replacement knocking on my door in a week.
Yes.
Division III, you have to spend more time developing and culturing the relationship. So I cared more about what my kids wanted 5 years after college, right? How much money do you want to make 5 years after college? You're now 26 years old. How much do you want to make? And they would give me a number, and I'd laugh, and I'd say, do you know anybody making that number? And they'd say, no. So we talked about money. I talked to him. I said, guys, I don't want to yell at you because I'm only 5-6 years older than you. I want us to have a mutual understanding. You see what J.J. Redick is going through right now.
Yes. Painful.
Right? J.J.'s 40, coaching a 40-year-old and his kid. That's a hard job.
Yes.
But with my kids, Coach, I want to make $150,000. Great. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about taxes. The Fed's going to take 30 of that. The state's going to take 10 of that. Medical and retirement, that 150 is really 80,000. Right. Then you live in the most expensive state in the country. Mm-hmm. You live in New York. So the cost of living is 95. So I gave all of them $150,000 salary. Dom, if you remember this, half of them were bankrupt in a year. Other half moved back home. That's on $150,000.
Yes.
The starting salary in New York is like 50.
Yes.
So I had to teach critical thinkers. And I told every parent, by the time your kid is done playing for me, I don't know if he'll be a great player or champion, but he will be better at critical thinking without you being involved.
I love it. I mean, critical thinking is everything. It's everything we do now. Talk to me about day trading. Yeah. How did you get into day trading, and what do you enjoy about it now?
Day trading came from failing accounting.
Real talk.
Yeah,
talk about it.
Yeah. So accounting is the organization of money, which has nothing to do with making money. And I saw this quote recently. Making money is a discipline. Keeping money is a discipline. Making money grow is an art. Mm-hmm. 3 different things. Mm-hmm. So accounting, I struggled with. I failed it once. I failed it twice. I now got to take out a loan and take it in summer school after I graduate. And I had a professor that was an alumni and a big basketball fan. So I'm very lucky for this professor. And he said, Kevin, I've seen you play. You're really good. There's no way you could be that good as a basketball player and be this bad at organizing money. So we're going to sit down this summer and really talk about it. And he was a hedge fund manager 20 years prior before he became an ad hoc professor. And he kind of told me, like, I would manage somebody like Kim Kardashian's money. She'd give me $10 million to manage and invest. She'd have a financial goal, maybe 4% on the year. So her goal is to make $400,000 off the $10 million without working. That was a whole great. Wait, we can make money without working? That sounds like my kind of plan. I don't have to listen to anybody. I don't have to work with anybody. I could just make $400,000 a year if I have $10 million principal.
Yeah.
And he talked about it, and I said, well, how does that work? And so we talked about scale and the average of numbers. And he said, Kevin, real wealth starts at 50 million. Because at 50 million, 1%, 10% is 5 million, 1% is 500,000. Mm-hmm. So if you can get people 3% on 50 million, they're making 1.5 million a year without working. That sounds like my kind of lifestyle.
Yes.
I just got to get the money.
Yes.
So my goal as a college student was, I don't know how much I'm worth on the open market, mm-hmm. right? I don't know how much my basketball game is worth. But if I could ever save $1 million and never spend it and just live off 3 to 4 or 5% of it, that's the idea of that was bigger than learning how to do it. So day trading was a discipline that I learned in my mid-20s. I was making about $1,000 every 2 weeks at my job. I've made $1,000 in a day before with my hustling. So at some point, my expertise as a professional had to match my hustle as an entrepreneur. And so my goal was never spending my work money. Mm-hmm. I would max out my 401k, 50%. So that means out of the $1,000, I'm bringing home like $300, but I'm putting $500 in my 401k for 3 years. And I was living with you guys. Mm-hmm. And you gave me a deadline. You got a year, figure it out. So I'd work my 9 to 5, then go right to the barbershop. That was my credit card money. I had to pay my credit card bills and my barbershop money. Then I would train my brother, his friends. Then I would record the workouts and create content. put it on YouTube. I charge $75 for a workout video, $50 out for the workout. And so I realized you can make a lot more off the books, but the money on the books, let the company match that. And so after 3 years, my 401k had saved $40,000. I didn't save $40,000, but by putting that kind of match in there. And so I gave that advice to young kids, and some of them followed it. You know, I got a young guy, Khalif Ginyard, one of Dom's teammates, works for Sloman's. 15-minute barbershop conversation. I just tried to write Khalif's insurance a month ago. He has 4 properties. He's 30 years old. So sometimes that advice is better than others than yourself, because I don't have 4 properties. But day trading was a discipline of learning psychology. It's just like the Michael Jordan sneakers on a Saturday. I buy the retail for $150. There's a buyer that'll pay $300 for it. That's a $150 flip. There's another buyer that'll pay $500 for it. But you better not be the guy that buys it for $700, because a new pair is coming out in a month.
The one thing I love and I remember about day trading, before we pivot, is you asked me, you were learning it, you learned it from your professor, and then you were following a guy, and you asked me, you said, Dad, should I pay for this guy's coaching?
Yeah, Jason Bond picks. I remember that.
I said, absolutely. I said, he has information that I can't teach you, and no one else is going to teach you without you paying for it. So you pay for that for a season. Fast forward many years, you now have the art yourself, but you were wise enough for what you knew on the court, off the court, that it was worth investing in a coach and learning so you could have it. And fast forward to today, you have the ability to make what you want to make and then turn your back and not be a pig. You don't have to finish all the food at Thanksgiving.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of adulthood, I'd want to say. And I had a lot of questions as a kid. Being the oldest, when you're the oldest, my middle brother, 6 years younger than me, you don't have a lot of people to talk to. So if you're at work and my mom's in the show, and so what happens is you start talking to people older than you. And they say a fool learns from his own mistakes, a wise man learns from mistakes of others. So I would ask people all the time, if you were my age, what would you do differently? That was my first question. I do this, I do that. And so as subjective as this is a cup of coffee. Some people might pay $1, some people pay $10, some people pay $20. Learning how to position it is everything. And so that's what coaches do. They set you up. A day trader coach will tell you how much money you comfortably losing. That's a question you won't hear anywhere else.
Scary.
When you have, your principal, the money you're starting out with, $1,500, $15,000, $15 million, the principal doesn't start. How much money are you okay losing before you sell? It's the first question he asked me.
Yes.
And I said, none of it. He said, well, you can't trade.
Yes.
And so I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, when I enter a trade, I'm buying Starbucks stock at $100. I'm okay losing $2 a share. So my plan is, if it goes to 98, I sell. I walk away. And I'm okay with a $2 loss. If it goes to 105, I sell. And I go, well, what if it goes to 120? That's not my concern. I just want a $5 return on my investment. Oh, how many shares do you buy? He's like, that you can't afford to ask me that question. And so he would have a community of people that paid $50 a month for his services. And there was a retired military guy. And he would come in the community chat. We'd all wait for the 8 to 10 stocks that might be moving that day, because you need volatility and liquidity to be able to get in and get out and get your number. And this gentleman would probably, Jason, I got 40 cents a share. I'm out for the day. Thanks a lot. Next day, Jason, I got 20 cents a share. At the time, I'm investing my life savings, which is $1,500. 20 cents on a trade might be $30 for me.
Right.
This guy was putting in his military savings, plus he ran 2 businesses. This guy was putting in $300 to $400 grand a trade. So 20 cents on 30,000 shares is $6,000. He would make $6,000 in 15 minutes. And I would chat him on the side. Mr. Robinson, I saw you've been trading. You're making a killing on like a 1% move. He goes, yeah, I'm putting in $250,000 a trade. Yeah. And so the real thing I learned is, Kevin, you don't need to be a great trader. You need more capital.
Yes.
So the $1,500, I just start saving, and I borrowed some money from some credit card loans. I think a credit card might say cash advance $4,000. I'd take out 4 cash advances. So now I'm not even investing my money. I'm investing the bank's money.
Yeah.
And that's when I got into different conversations with people. And if you don't inherit it, if you don't get it from a lawsuit, you gotta get it from the mud. You have to have a long-term plan. And having friends in the NBA making a lot more money, I said, it's not my time. They got it right now. I'll have it by 40. So that was my discipline.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Talk about generational wealth. That's one of the questions that Chanel Harper put into the comments. What does generational wealth mean to you? Being born in our family, knowing you're old enough to remember your grandfather, the cleaning business he started, knowing that many of the people in our family are entrepreneurs. What does generational wealth mean to you?
Having a different relationship with your kids, your kids and the time you could spend with them. Mm-hmm. I think that's the personal. Generational wealth is understanding that time is the biggest commodity, not money.
Yes.
Money comes and goes, but the time you can spend bringing your kid to the school bus, picking them up from the school bus, cooking dinner together with them, learning things together, letting them teach you stuff. And if you don't have any time, you can't even talk about wealth. More importantly, understanding vehicles that can do it. One thing you taught me early on was we only have like 15 or 20 real earning years. Mm-hmm. So we talked about this yesterday. Learn, earn, return.
Yes.
A doctor, his earning potential is different than a construction worker, is different than a day trader. Doctors don't get out of debt until 32. Lawyers don't get out of debt until 33. So their earning years are only like 30 to 50. So in that 20 years, you got to make a lot of money. But NBA players that get paid $100 million at 19, they might be done earning money by 23. And that has to last for 40 years. So just understanding your timeline and the vehicles you want to use. Do I want to kill myself saving $1 million over 30 years? Or do I want to get a life insurance product that will take care of my family? God forbid I transition. It's just a different conversation. Do I want to borrow against my retirement? Do I want to I tell young guys, hey, how long does it take for you to save 10 grand? Mm-hmm. And you'd be shocked. These Bitcoin kids, all the business they got going, streaming guys, my influencer. All right, we'll put away 10 grand mm-hmm. and buy a property. And then that property, the equity doubles and triples. We've talked about this with the home insurance sales we make. I have a brother-in-law. I have friends that bought a property 3 years ago for $600,000, and they put $15,000 into it. That property is now 1.2. Mm-hmm. They have access to $600,000 in equity. They could not have saved $200,000 a year for 3 years and still live a normal life. So just having vehicle conversations, the insurance, purchasing an insurance agency. Mm-hmm. Never understood the sacrifices you made and what you went through to leave a very cushioned position that you earned in your late 30s. And you said, F it, I'm going to cash in. I'm a bet on myself. I learned the inside. It's time for me to earn. You put up the 401k, the pension, everything to have your own thing, but now you got to make it work. So I think that's the biggest part of generational wealth is, number one, establishing a time frame of how long you want to bust your tail to earn, how much you want to learn and teach yourself outside of earning, and then at what point do you want to take the risk to double it. I'm in a risk right now. Right before we start, I put in a risk, and I got to wait until 3:30 today so you're gonna come back to me. So the risk toleration is important too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. 2 minutes on the insurance business. You were born in the insurance business. You were born in 86. I started with Allstate in 87. You've been with me every step of the way, every moment between trying to be a nurturing dad, but at the same time, your whole life I've been studying for one test or another. We start the agency in 2007. You're in college, and you've always worked in the agency. You've been in every conversation from conception to completion. You've worked for Allstate corporate in a couple of capacities. You've demonstrated leadership in other capacities, and now you come back as the vice president of the agency, the heir apparent of the agency. Talk about the state of the insurance industry right now and your journey and how you see it as a homeowner and that really understands the need at your age now as opposed to when you first got your license the first time many years ago. What do you see in the insurance industry first? And I'll ask you one more insurance question.
Well, the first thing is just understanding the product. It's a very, very unique product, and there's no product like it. Mm-hmm. When I walk into your Allstate agency, I'm offering you money. You're offering me a promise. Mm-hmm. There's nothing tangible about a promise. Right, Kevin, here's $500 a month, and if something happens, you got my back.
Yes.
Tree falls on my roof, my car gets, caught in a flood, something happens to me, you're going to take care of my wife and my son. That's a different type of dynamic because when I leave, I don't have anything in my hand, and I see a withdrawal out of my account every month. So it takes a certain level of just understanding the product and what it does for you. That's number one. Number two, understanding your behavior as a consumer. If I have a heavy foot as a driver, my most important contact is my insurance agent. If I live in a high traffic environment, New York City, gridlock traffic, HOV lanes, all the cameras in the sky that take pictures of you when you blow through a red. So all of these things that happen, the insurance industry is very unique because it's changed so much in the last 70 years. When it first happened, people pooled together their money in case something happened. So in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, America looked different. You know, husband, wife, 2.5 kids, a dog, and a picket fence. And so we could look at it and say, what's the worst that might happen in this area? No hurricanes, no floods, nothing going on, no cars that drive themselves, no motorized scooters, no pedestrians. And so they could look at something bad might happen once every 75 days. But if we collect enough premium from enough individuals, we can offset those costs and be profitable. 80 years later, the world changed. I don't drive in the city. My friends that have a net worth don't drive anymore because we can't take a lawsuit. I don't want to be sued. I have something to lose. So you move a little differently. So I think the biggest change in the insurance industry, just look at Tesla right now. Elon Musk is making spaceships and cars that drive themselves, and people don't need to drive. We also have these smartphones where I can order something on Amazon, book a haircut appointment, DoorDash some food, and pay all my bills from a phone. Yeah. So if I'm driving, I'm probably not paying attention to what's in front of me. That's the biggest change. Accidents are probably 20 times over in the last 10 years due to the smartphone. That's, you know, a grandma talking to her grandkid in the back of the car. That's a professional spilling coffee in his lap. That's somebody listening to a podcast and just not paying attention. It's very expensive. The cost of medical bills, the cost of a rental car. Try to get a rental car in New York in the holidays. Good luck.
Not gonna happen.
The cost of a lawyer. You know, I was in a car accident Christmas Day 2021. Very lucky to still be here, you know, and my lawyer took 40%, like he went through the pain. So just understanding money and understanding loss, that's the biggest thing in the insurance business. But if you position yourself correctly, you could help a lot of people, help a lot of customers. And I know the one thing that you pride yourself on is when there is a hurricane in New York, when there is a windstorm, when there is a tree falling, you're the first person there with an Allstate jacket, helping people who have questions, and you're looking there to critical think and deliver a solution and a result.
I love it. I love it. Last insurance question. So people, when you see me moving around the country, speaking here and there, podcasting, coaching, one of the reasons I'm able to do it is because I have my son here as the vice president of the agency, and he sets my agency to work every morning with a morning call, and he makes our team comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. So 2 of the calls I was able to join this week, I wasn't able to join today. You introduced 2 topics that's very helpful to our staff. One day you talked about insurance fraud. Another day you talked about insurance credit scores. Expand upon that a little bit for the consumer that's listening and doesn't understand.
Well, number one, I'm just happy you have a team. In 2007, when you first purchased the agency, it was just me and your oldest nephew, my cousin Jay, who has his own agency now. Shout out to Jay Matthews, his Allstate agency. So having a dozen team members, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, they bring so much to the table. Really just putting them in position to be successful is important to me. And that puts me in my natural position of being a point guard, distributing and figuring out problems. Insurance consumer score and credit score. Those 2 things are huge because people think that you could just get insurance without going through what you may have been through as a consumer. I probably don't want to insure a teenager right now. TikTok, friends in the car, new Kendrick album just dropped. There's a lot of hazards there. I have friends that have teenagers now. They call me scared. Tommy London, I'll give you a call back by noon. But yeah, my friends that are now approaching 40 have teenage kids and they're scared. If your grandma or mother-in-law is still driving, anybody, you know, over a certain age, you know, you do lose eyesight. You do lose the ability to make a judgment call last minute if your tires are sliding. So senior citizens and driving is a very scary thing. Overall, who does it affect? The paying customer. So when I tell people, hey, we're going to do an insurance review, we're going to talk about your relationship with insurance companies over the last few years. Have you been with 4 companies in 4 years? Are you a serial dater in the insurance game? It's not a good look. Do you have a hard time paying all your other bills? I don't want to sign a contract with you if you owe PSEG, National Grid, Optimum Online, and everywhere else across the board. Lastly, number 3, Have you received an insurance payout before? My wife's friends have been through a couple different insurance accidents. They've gotten $80, $90, $100,000 payouts. You are a high flight risk to the next insurer. So if you got the bag from insurance accident, maybe a little wrist surgery, something not too invasive, I hope you invest that properly, because you will never see an insurance rate that's cheap again. So understanding the insurance score is understanding how I look to an insurer, right? Medical insurance, car insurance, home insurance. Have you lost a Rolex? Have you lost a laptop that cost them some money? And when people learn about that, they realize this is not something to play with. I tell people every day, your insurability moving forward, as you acquire more properties, you become a landlord, you become a homeowner, your insurability over the next 30 years is more important than any flip you got over the last 10.
I love it. I love it. All right. We're getting ready to land the plane. I'd be a poor podcaster if I didn't ask you questions about your journey. You mentioned Danny Green Jr. earlier. We talked about your business acumen, your basketball journey. Talk about the journey that you took with Danny from draft until his recent announcement of retirement, what that look was like, what people think the NBA is like from the outside, and then what it's like, really to be there with your best friend. You're the best man at his wedding. He's the best man in your wedding. So just talk about, shout out to Danny. Congratulations on the retirement, but talk about that journey a little bit.
1,000%. There's a great scene in a movie called The Town with Ben Affleck and his buddies. And Ben is from the tough part of Boston, and he wants a better life. He met a girl at a flower shop, but he robs banks. And when I grew up and those Division I workouts we talked about, the jumping of the rope, the strength shoes, the running miles, the dribbling a heavy ball, there was no workout I could put together and Danny wouldn't do it with me. Yeah. So I'd walk in and I'd be like, listen, we're going to go to a gym. We're going to go through a lot of pain, and then we're going to hurt some people and play him. No questions asked. And he would go, you driving or am I driving? Like, he was the only young person that could hang. Him and his brother Rashad, they would suffer with me.
I remember. I took you and Jerry to work out with Britt one time.
Oh, me and Danny.
I took you and Danny. We picked Danny up around the corner. We go to the workout, and y'all go through a half an hour, some of the hardest times in my life. Yeah. And I stand up, so that's good stuff. That was tough. You're like, Dad, where you going? So I said, no, that was the warm-up.
Yeah, it was a 90-minute workout with one of the best trainers. Shout out to Britt Kelly. But no, I said it to say Danny was he's a year and 3 months younger than me, and whatever workout we did, he always hung. That was the nature of our friendship, was how much we trained to get ready. And so by the time he got to 6'6", he could shoot it. He was ambidextrous. He could defend. He was the first 1 through 4 kind of player. I'm like, Danny could play point guard, shooting guard, small forward, and power forward. And I don't think he knows his potential yet. But by the time he got to UNC and just great coaching, I would pick his brain, and he played for every coach that I admired. So, Danny, what's Roy Williams like? And Danny could give me the whole UNC practice plan. And that gives me an advantage when I play against people I play against. Then he goes to the Spurs, and I bring him to the airport, drop him off. And once he got established down there, I go visit him, go to a Spurs practice. Oh, man, this is even more detailed. So the learning was always what I loved about our friendship, is how much he can go from being a 5 player to a 7 player to now. Man, the craziest day was the 2013 NBA Finals. And Danny's starting, and he's guarding LeBron, and he's guarding Ray Allen, and he's guarding Dwayne Wade, and he's locking him up. And then he broke the NBA Finals record, and I'm looking at my guy, like I said, we're only 15 months apart, like a younger brother, but I'm like, this dude is here. Yeah. And he had, you ever seen Last Dragon? He had the Bruce Leroy glow, and he's dunking on Chris Bosh, and he's stealing from LeBron. He's making shots. And I knew it was an out-of-body experience, because if they win Game 6 and Ray Allen doesn't make that shot, it's an 80% probability. Magic Johnson and Jalen Rose said Danny Green might be the Finals MVP. And after the series, when they lost, I said, do you know what you did? He went, I have no idea. I don't know what happened. It's like he just blacked out for 5 weeks and was the best player the world's ever seen. And then he has no idea how he did it, but it was because of the work. So, yeah, watching Danny kind of navigate a 15-year NBA career, shout out to him, just retired recently, doing a lot of commentary work for the Spurs and the NBA and NBA Game Time. But he just never skipped any steps. When people look at his journey, he never skipped a step. He never missed a line on his sprints. He never cheated on the push-ups. And so I tell people his story of being one of the only 4 individuals that have 3 championships with 3 different teams, one of the only, I think, 24 guys that have an NCAA and an NBA championship. He's the guy you call and say, hey, how do I get that? Just don't skip any steps. And that's the best part. I think you've been able to see the journey and learn it. And same thing you've built with your podcast and your books and your agency. When people ask, Kevin, how do you do it? Just don't miss a breakfast. Don't skip any steps.
I love it. I love it. You talked about 2013, the missed shot. You talked about 2014, he wins. 2019, Raptors. You're in Toronto. Yeah. You're on stage. Yeah. You're in Toronto a lot. You and Danny had a lot of business in Toronto. You're filming a documentary. Just last question to wrap it up. What did it feel like being at that parade in Toronto and going through the city with 1 million people there, and Danny, who's a non-drinker, the fans are urging him to chug a beer, and you stepped in as his wingman, and you had to take that on for him.
It was so bittersweet because 12 months before that, he was in San Antonio for 8 years. You know, like I said, broke a lot of records, single season 3-point, made an all-defensive team in San Antonio. I was there when he got traded for DeMar DeRozan. So that was a bad time. It's like, wait, you don't love me anymore? So watching him go through those feelings of, I got to move to a new city. I got to get a place. I got to get some underwear, some socks. Like, we just had to, I think the biggest thing was making sure he was okay with the day-to-day. I mean, you're going from Texas where it's hot all the time to Toronto where it's cold all the time. You're on the water. New team, bunch of veterans, new coach. So just kind of making sure that he was good day to day with his routine. And by the time the team got rolling, and Kawhi had missed 30 games. Yeah. So watching him start his podcast Inside the Green Room. Shout out to Amjad Osman, you know, my young bro. He created Danny's podcast. His 31st birthday is coming up in a couple of days, and Harrison Sanford his birthday is coming up. So watching those guys build a podcast in Toronto. Where Kawhi doesn't talk that much and Kyle Lowry doesn't talk that much, and they built something organic. They gained 40,000 subscribers to Yahoo Sports Canada. Danny had brought me to Canada many years to do a camp up in Huntsville. Future Stars basketball camp. We'd work with all the guys from Corey Joseph to, I think we met Andrew Wiggins as a kid. So full circle, 11 years later, it was like family up there, and the opportunity was incredible. And so now watching him go from the guy that got traded in the 25th hour to the guy who delivered, Canada only has 40 million residents, the country, and it's bigger than America. 10% of the country was at the parade, and I remember I called you, and I got to call my dad, man. So you were in the office, and I'm on a parade bus with Drake behind me, and Phil Handy, the NBA trainer, and Fred VanVleet, and Norman Powell, and Danny and the crew. And it was one of those moments where I said, man, the basketball guy saw him work his tail off since 13, and this is the biggest payout I've ever seen in my life. And to this day, man, Toronto still loves him, and then he gets traded to the Lakers, and he wins one with LeBron in the bubble. So one of the best times, and very happy to, let you see it. You came out to Laker land. You enjoy the hiking and the beach.
I didn't enjoy the hiking. You tried to kill me.
Yeah, that was my payback.
I stand to correct it. I did not enjoy the hiking. He tried to kill me on Runyon Canyon, but beautiful stories. We can go on indefinitely, but we're right at an hour, so we're going to bring it to a close right here. Anything you want to share, anything you want to talk about I didn't ask before we call it a wrap? No, I think we covered everything, man. If they'd have us, I'd love to have a round two at some point, maybe come back and get more into depth about specific questions, topics. Some of the fans, because we do this all the time, so definitely a pleasure. Thanks for having me out on the first time. It's season 5? Season 5, my first time on the show. You kidding me? But I appreciate you having me. I apologize. We built the podcast with half your friends, Lauren Granger, Carlos Salinas, When I was in LA, I lived in LA, and I was out there with Danny trying to move a maneuver, and all my friends were guests. And Monique was a book writer. Yep, absolutely. Shout out to Monique and Lauren and her husband Frank doing a lot of the they were doing contracting work in the home, and Carlos shutting it down. So, man, definitely happy to see you move on to season 5. This guy's going to season 5. Yeah. I don't know what episode we at, but thank you for being here. This was a rich conversation. I can definitely see you as life calls me to do more. I can see you in the host chair hosting and doing some of this for me. One question I'm going to ask for this season, I'm going to ask all my guests, who else do you think would be a great guest on this podcast? Number 1. And 2, can you help me get them? Yeah,
Your wife.
Oh no. That goes back
You guys
to the
would've seen the
marriage
real magic,
question.
yeah.
Do you want to be right or you want to be happy?
I think it would be great for people to see the woman who's allowed you to grow in this space. That's a whole different conversation. But yeah, your support system. I think people asking questions about that, because if you see all these ideas and the books and the podcast, that means somebody's not doing the dishes at home or fixing a roof. So you guys should see his backbone.
Oh my
The
God.
Pauletta Washington to the Abraham Kevin Spann business. Bring Denise on here.
She is all that and this some, but I'm going to get out while I'm alive and I can maintain my happiness without needing to be right. So for all of you out there, thank you for watching another episode of Wine Down with Kev, the Dream Chaser podcast. Remember, you're never too old to dream. So please take one small step to start chasing your dreams today.